Hello, my name is Jacob. Let me take you on an immersive journey through my life, spanning the challenges and triumphs of mastering English. This isn't just a story about learning a language, it's about transformation, persistence, and discovering new opportunities. Learning English unlocked doors I never thought possible, connecting me to incredible people and enabling dreams I once considered unreachable. However, the road to fluency was anything but smooth. It was filled with moments of doubt, failure, and determination. In this extended narrative, I will share the highs and lows of my journey, lessons I learned, and strategies that helped me succeed. My hope is that my story inspires you to embark on or continue your own English learning adventure, step by step, toward the life you envision. I still remember my first attempt at speaking English vividly, as though it happened yesterday. My hands were trembling uncontrollably, and my voice cracked nervously as I forced out the words, "Excuse me, can you help me?" to a stranger on the street. The sentence, though simple, felt like a monumental task, and each word seemed foreign and heavy on my tongue. To my astonishment, the stranger smiled warmly and responded kindly, as though my imperfect English didn't matter. That single moment became a defining experience in my journey. It taught me that the courage to speak, even imperfectly, could lead to connection and understanding. It was the spark that ignited my determination to learn and grow, showing me that every small step forward was worth taking. Before this, fear consumed me like a shadow I couldn't escape. Every time I thought about speaking English, my mind filled with doubts. What if I made a mistake? What if someone laughed at my strange accent? These questions haunted me and kept me silent for a long time. But one day, I realized that letting fear control me was stopping me from moving forward. I decided to take a small step, and with each step, I discovered important truths that changed my perspective forever. 1. Every mistake I made while learning English became a valuable lesson. Mispronouncing words, forgetting grammar rules, or using the wrong expressions felt embarrassing at first, but over time, I realized these were hidden opportunities for growth. Imagine trying to learn how to ride a bicycle. Falling down is part of the process, but each fall teaches you how to balance better. Similarly, each mistake in English taught me something new. One time, I used the wrong tense while asking for directions, and the kind stranger gently corrected me. That moment stuck with me, and I never forgot how to use that tense again. Embracing these errors, instead of fearing them, became my secret to improvement. Each misstep was a teacher, showing me where to focus and how to grow. 2. Kindness is one of the most surprising lessons I learned on my journey to mastering English. People often appreciate your effort far more than you expect, even when your words come out imperfectly. For example, I once approached a shopkeeper in a foreign country, struggling to explain what I needed in broken English. To my surprise, the shopkeeper didn't get impatient or dismissive. Instead, they smiled warmly, listened attentively, and even helped me complete my sentences. Moments like these reinforced my belief that most people are kind and supportive when they see you making an effort to learn their language. This realization gave me the courage to speak up more often, knowing that the majority of listeners wouldn't judge me but would instead encourage my growth. Practicing small, manageable phrases was one of the first steps that helped me ease into speaking English. I began with simple greetings like "Hello, how are you?" and "Thank you." These phrases were easy to remember and gave me the confidence to start conversations. Slowly, I added more questions like "Can you help me?" or "Where is the nearest bus stop?" to expand my comfort zone. Every time I used one of these phrases, it felt like a small victory. By repeating these simple interactions, I not only became more confident but also began to understand how to naturally string sentences together. Over time, this practice built a strong foundation, preparing me for longer and more complex conversations in English. Standing in front of a mirror and rehearsing conversations became a transformative part of my journey. At first, it felt strange and even silly to speak to my own reflection. However, as I practiced, I began to notice improvements in my pronunciation, facial expressions, and confidence. It was like creating a safe space where I could experiment with words and phrases without fear of judgment. I would pretend to order food at a restaurant, ask for directions, or introduce myself to someone new. Each time I rehearsed, I grew a little more comfortable with how the words sounded. I even practiced smiling while speaking, which made me feel more approachable and confident. Over time, these small mirror sessions became powerful tools that prepared me for real-world conversations. They gave me the courage to speak in public and reminded me that practice, even in the simplest forms, builds skill and self-assurance. Celebrating every success, no matter how small, became a cornerstone of my journey to learning English. I remember vividly the first time I successfully ordered a meal in English at a restaurant. The waiter smiled, took my order without hesitation, and brought exactly what I had asked for. It felt like a huge accomplishment, even though it was something most people would consider routine. But for me, it wasn't just about ordering food, it was about proving to myself that I could communicate in a language that once felt out of reach. These small wins, like asking for directions, greeting someone politely, or understanding a joke, kept me motivated. They reminded me that progress isn't always measured by big milestones. Sometimes, it's the accumulation of little victories that pushes you forward. With each success, my confidence grew, and I started to believe that fluency was not just a dream but a reality within my grasp. Listening became the cornerstone of my language learning journey. When I first started, understanding English felt like trying to decode a foreign puzzle. Movies and songs that others seemed to enjoy effortlessly were, for me, a jumble of incomprehensible words. The frustration was real, but I realized that immersion was the key to breaking through this barrier. I committed to making listening a daily habit, even when it felt overwhelming and progress seemed slow. Each day, I would set aside time to watch English movies with subtitles. Initially, I focused on matching the words I heard to the text on the screen. Over weeks, patterns began to emerge, and phrases started to sound familiar. I remember vividly one of my early successes with listening. It was during a scene in a popular movie where a character gave an emotional speech. For the first time, I understood the meaning without needing to pause or rely heavily on subtitles. That moment felt like magic and gave me the motivation to keep going. Beyond movies, I turned to podcasts about topics I enjoyed. Listening to travel stories and cooking tips not only improved my comprehension, but also made the process enjoyable. Songs became another powerful tool. I would pick a song I liked, listen to it repeatedly, and then look up the lyrics. Singing along helped me practice pronunciation and rhythm, turning learning into an interactive and joyful activity. One unforgettable experience came from a song by Adele. I played it on repeat, determined to catch every word of the chorus. By the 10th attempt, I was singing along confidently. That small victory fueled my determination, showing me that consistent listening could lead to remarkable improvement. Slowly but surely, the language that once felt foreign began to feel like a part of me. Watching movies with subtitles became one of the most enjoyable and effective ways for me to learn English. At first, I chose films that I already loved, ones I had seen in my native language. With subtitles turned on, I carefully listened to the dialogue and followed along with the text. This allowed me to connect the words I heard with their meanings on the screen. Over time, I began to recognize patterns in how sentences were constructed and how certain phrases were used in context. After several weeks of consistent practice, I challenged myself to watch short scenes without subtitles. At first, it was intimidating, but I realized that even catching a few words or phrases was progress. Gradually, my ability to understand spoken English improved, and I found myself relying less and less on subtitles. By the time I transitioned to watching entire movies without them, I noticed a significant improvement in my listening skills. I remember the first time I watched an English comedy without subtitles and laughed at the jokes without needing translation. It was a thrilling moment, a sign that I was truly beginning to understand the language on a deeper level. This approach not only improved my listening skills but also made learning enjoyable. Each movie became a mini lesson in vocabulary, pronunciation, and cultural nuances, making the process both educational and fun. The podcasts became a transformative tool in my journey to mastering English. I started by selecting topics that truly fascinated me, such as travel adventures, cooking tips, and captivating storytelling. Listening to conversational English in these podcasts not only improved my comprehension, but also exposed me to the natural rhythm and flow of the language. I remember tuning in during my daily routines, whether it was while commuting, cooking, or even just relaxing. It felt like having an informal English lesson tailored to my interests. One memorable moment was when I stumbled upon a podcast about exploring hidden gems in Europe. The host's enthusiastic narration drew me in, and although I didn't understand every word, I could grasp the overall story. I replayed certain episodes multiple times, focusing on the intonation and pronunciation. Over time, I started picking up phrases and expressions that made their way into my own vocabulary. Listening actively became my key strategy. I would pause and repeat phrases, mimicking the speaker's tone and style. Sometimes, I even wrote down sentences that resonated with me to practice later. Podcasts taught me how native speakers structure their sentences, use idioms, and express emotions. They also gave me a sense of accomplishment. The more I listened, the more I understood. Eventually, podcasts became a bridge between learning and real-life application. They inspired me to engage in conversations and use the phrases I had absorbed. It wasn't just about learning words. It was about immersing myself in the language and its culture. These auditory experiences enriched my journey and showed me that fluency isn't a destination but a continuous, enjoyable process. And music became my secret weapon in learning English. Songs are universal, and the melodies made the process enjoyable rather than daunting. When I first started, I chose simple, slow songs with clear lyrics. One of my favorites was a ballad that repeated its chorus multiple times. Singing along to it wasn't just fun, it was an exercise in pronunciation, rhythm, and listening comprehension. Every evening, I would put on my headphones, play the same song, and try to match the singer's voice. At first, it was challenging. Some words were unfamiliar, and my accent made the lyrics sound awkward. But as I practiced, the song began to feel like a puzzle I was solving piece by piece. By the end of the first week, I could sing the chorus flawlessly. This small victory gave me a huge confidence boost and made me eager to try more songs. I remember tackling a fast-paced pop song next. It was much harder to keep up with, but I broke it down into smaller sections. I listened carefully to each line, repeated it slowly, and then tried singing along. Each successful attempt felt like progress, no matter how minor. Over time, I found myself naturally mimicking the singer's pronunciation and intonation, which made my spoken English sound more authentic. Music also taught me vocabulary in an engaging way. When I didn't understand a word, I would look it up and learn its meaning. Songs often use idioms or colloquial expressions, which help me understand how English is used in everyday conversations. For example, a line from a song taught me the phrase "break the ice," which I later used during a real-life conversation to make someone laugh. It felt incredible to see my learning come to life in such a practical way. One of the most memorable experiences I had was with an Adele song. Her voice was so powerful, and her lyrics were filled with emotion. I spent an entire weekend trying to perfect one of her choruses. By Sunday evening, I was singing along confidently, and it felt like I had climbed a mountain. That accomplishment showed me that dedication and repetition could turn even the hardest challenges into successes. Singing wasn't just about improving my English skills, it also became a source of joy and relaxation. When I felt frustrated or stuck in my learning, I would turn to music. The combination of rhythm, melody, and language created a safe space where I could experiment without fear of judgment. It didn't matter if I stumbled over words or hit the wrong notes. What mattered was that I was engaging with the language in a way that felt natural and uplifting. Over time, I expanded my playlist to include songs from different genres, each offering new challenges and lessons. Slow ballads helped me focus on pronunciation, while upbeat tracks improved my fluency and speed. Even rap songs became a fun way to practice, as they pushed me to keep up with fast, complex lyrics. Each song was like a new teacher, guiding me toward fluency in its own unique way. Music made learning English feel less like a chore and more like an adventure. It showed me that language isn't just about words, it's about expression, emotion, and connection. By singing along to my favorite songs, I not only improved my language skills but also found a deeper appreciation for the art of communication. This combination of learning and joy kept me motivated, even on the toughest days. It's a method I still recommend to anyone looking to make their English journey more exciting and rewarding. Storytime. One day, I found myself captivated by an Adele song. Her voice was so powerful, and the lyrics carried a deep emotional weight that resonated with me. Determined to understand every word, I played the song on repeat, over and over again. At first, I struggled to catch even a few phrases, and some of the lyrics felt like they slipped away as quickly as I heard them. But I didn't give up. I kept listening, concentrating on one line at a time. I would pause the song, replay it, and try to match the sounds I heard with the words I knew. By the fifth attempt, I began recognizing the chorus. It became familiar, like a puzzle piece finally fitting into place. I sang along tentatively, stumbling over a few words, but I could feel myself improving with each try. By the 10th repeat, I was singing the chorus with confidence, my pronunciation clearer and my rhythm more aligned with the song. That small achievement felt monumental. It wasn't just about mastering a song, it was about proving to myself that with persistence, I could achieve fluency in something that initially seemed difficult. This experience with Adele's music fueled my determination to tackle even greater challenges in my English learning journey. It showed me the power of repetition, focus, and breaking tasks into smaller, manageable pieces. Each successful attempt built my confidence and reminded me that every small step counts in the journey to mastering a language. Speaking was my greatest challenge and the obstacle that intimidated me the most. Every time I thought about opening my mouth to speak English, I felt paralyzed with fear. Questions raced through my mind. What if I say the wrong word? What if my grammar is terrible? What if someone laughs at me? These worries kept me silent for a long time, but deep down, I knew that I couldn't improve without trying. I had to push through the fear and take that first step, no matter how small or imperfect it might be. I remember one particular day when I attended a language exchange meetup. I was paired with a native English speaker named Sarah. My heart pounded as I tried to think of what to say. The words I wanted to use jumbled together in my head, and when I finally spoke, my sentences came out broken and hesitant. But instead of judging me, Sarah smiled warmly and encouraged me to keep going. Focus on communicating, not perfection, she said. That simple piece of advice changed everything for me. It gave me the confidence to keep talking, even if my sentences weren't perfect. To overcome my fear, I started practicing on my own. I narrated my daily activities in English, describing everything I did, from brushing my teeth to making breakfast. At first, it felt strange to talk to myself, but over time, it became natural. I also practiced mimicking phrases I heard in movies or podcasts. I would replay scenes over and over, trying to match the actor's pronunciation and intonation. This repetition helped me gain a better sense of how the language should sound and made me more confident when I spoke to others. Another strategy that helped me immensely was role-playing. I would imagine different scenarios, like ordering food at a restaurant or booking a hotel room, and practice what I would say. Sometimes, I even wrote down scripts and rehearsed them aloud. These exercises prepared me for real-life situations and reduced my anxiety when the time came to actually speak. I learned an important lesson during this process. The more you practice, the more natural it feels. Speaking is like any other skill. It requires repetition and consistency. At first, every conversation felt like climbing a mountain, but with time and effort, the fear began to fade. Each interaction, no matter how small, was a step closer to fluency. I started to realize that most people were not focused on my mistakes. Instead, they appreciated my effort and were willing to help me improve. This realization gave me the courage to keep speaking and to embrace the journey of learning English. My breakthrough came during a language exchange meetup where I was paired with Sarah, a kind and patient native speaker. At the start, I fumbled through my words, tripping over grammar and mispronunciations. My sentences were disjointed, and I felt self-conscious about every mistake. But Sarah's reaction surprised me. Instead of showing frustration, she smiled and said, "Focus on communicating, not perfection." Those words struck a chord. It was as if she had given me permission to stop worrying about being flawless and to start focusing on simply expressing myself. I took a deep breath and tried again. I spoke slowly, choosing simple words and phrases, and though my sentences were still far from perfect, Sarah listened attentively and responded warmly. The pressure to perform perfectly began to lift, and for the first time, I felt comfortable speaking English without fear of judgment. By the end of that conversation, I realized how much I had been holding myself back by striving for perfection. This pivotal moment taught me that language learning isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about using those mistakes as stepping stones to grow and connect with others. 1. Talking to myself in English was one of the most unusual but surprisingly effective strategies I discovered. At first, it felt strange and even a little embarrassing, but as I persisted, it became a powerful tool for building confidence. Every morning, I would describe my daily routine out loud. "I am brushing my teeth now," or "I am making breakfast with eggs and toast." These simple sentences helped me practice forming thoughts in English without the pressure of speaking to someone else. As I grew more comfortable, I expanded my practice by narrating more complex tasks or even imagining conversations. For instance, I would pretend to explain a recipe or describe my favorite movie. This not only improved my fluency but also taught me how to organize my thoughts clearly. By repeating these self-dialogues every day, my vocabulary naturally grew, and my sentences became smoother. One memorable moment came when I narrated a pretend conversation about asking for directions. Later that week, I found myself in a real-life situation where I needed to ask someone for help in English. To my surprise, the words flowed effortlessly because I had already practiced the scenario on my own. Talking to myself transformed my fears into opportunities for growth and prepared me for real-world interactions. 2. Repetition. Mimicking phrases from movies or podcasts helped me master pronunciation. 3. Role-playing. Pretending to order food or book a hotel room prepared me for real-life scenarios. Lesson learned. The more I spoke, the more natural it felt. At first, every conversation seemed like a monumental task. I would rehearse sentences in my head, worrying about whether I would use the right words or pronounce them correctly. But with every attempt, my fear began to fade. Each interaction, no matter how brief or imperfect, became a step forward. I remember asking a shopkeeper about a product. My words were hesitant, and my grammar was shaky, but they understood me and responded kindly. That small exchange gave me the courage to try again and again. Over time, speaking English became less about fear and more about connection. I started to focus on the message I wanted to convey rather than the potential mistakes I might make. Conversations with friends, strangers, or even colleagues began to flow more naturally. I realized that fluency isn't about knowing every word or constructing perfect sentences. It's about expressing yourself and being understood. With each conversation, I built confidence, learned new words, and grew closer to mastering the language. Reading and writing became my safe spaces, where I could immerse myself in the language without the immediate pressure of speaking. These activities allowed me to explore English at my own pace, turning it into a personal and reflective process. I started with children's books, drawn to their simple language and clear structure. They were perfect for a beginner like me, offering stories that were engaging yet easy to understand. As I read, I underlined new words and phrases, making a habit of looking them up and writing down their meanings. Slowly, my vocabulary expanded, and I found myself recognizing these words in conversations and other readings. Journaling was another breakthrough for me. Each night, I would sit down and write about my day, what I did, how I felt, and what I learned. At first, my sentences were basic and riddled with errors, but the act of writing helped me think in English and organize my thoughts. Over time, my entries became more detailed and grammatically accurate. I remember the pride I felt when I reread my first journal entry months later and realized how much I had improved. Writing gave me a space to practice freely, without fear of being judged, and helped solidify the vocabulary and grammar I was learning through reading. Feedback from friends and teachers also played a crucial role in my progress. I shared my writings with those more fluent than me, inviting them to correct my mistakes and suggest better ways to express my thoughts. Their insights were invaluable, helping me avoid repeating errors and learn more natural ways to phrase my sentences. One teacher even encouraged me to try writing short stories, which challenged me to use my imagination while applying my growing language skills. Reading and writing were not just tools for learning, they became a source of joy and accomplishment. With every new book I finished or journal entry I wrote, I felt more confident in my ability to master English. These activities reminded me that language learning isn't just about speaking, it's about understanding, expressing, and connecting on multiple levels. Children's books were the gateway to my English learning journey. Their simple language, vibrant illustrations, and straightforward stories made them ideal for beginners like me. I started with classics, books designed for kids, yet full of lessons for learners of any age. These stories were engaging and helped me familiarize myself with common sentence structures and vocabulary. As I turned the pages, I would read aloud, practicing pronunciation and intonation. When I encountered a new word, I would jot it down and look it up later, often using it in my own sentences to reinforce my understanding. Over time, these small exercises built my confidence and expanded my vocabulary. These books didn't just teach me English, they reminded me of the joy of learning through stories, a joy that carried me forward in my language journey. Journaling was an incredibly transformative habit in my English learning journey. Every night, I would sit down with a notebook and write about my day, my goals, and even the small frustrations I encountered while learning the language. At first, my sentences were simple and riddled with errors, but that didn't stop me. This practice forced me to think in English, helping me organize my thoughts and express myself clearly. Over time, my entries evolved from basic phrases like "today was good" to more detailed accounts of my experiences and feelings. I began to experiment with new words and grammatical structures that I had picked up from books or conversations. Journaling also served as a personal reflection tool. When I reread my entries months later, I was astonished at the progress I had made. What had once been clumsy sentences were now flowing paragraphs. This visible improvement boosted my confidence and motivated me to continue. To enhance this habit, I started sharing some of my journal entries with friends and teachers who were fluent in English. Their feedback helped me refine my grammar, expand my vocabulary, and express my ideas more naturally. It became a collaborative process, turning my private practice into an interactive learning experience. Journaling not only improved my grammar and vocabulary, but also taught me the joy of capturing life's moments through a new language, making every written word a step toward fluency. Feedback was one of the most powerful tools in my English learning journey. Sharing my writing with friends and teachers opened up new avenues for improvement that I couldn't have discovered on my own. Every time I handed over a journal entry or a short story, I was nervous about the mistakes they might find. But instead of criticism, I received constructive advice that strengthened my understanding of grammar, sentence structure, and even cultural nuances in English. For example, a teacher once pointed out that I was overusing certain words in my writing. They suggested synonyms and showed me how to add variety to my vocabulary. Another time, a friend highlighted areas where my sentences felt awkward and provided examples of how native speakers might phrase them. These insights were invaluable, not only because they improved my technical skills but also because they taught me how to express myself more naturally and effectively. Feedback sessions also taught me the importance of collaboration. Language isn't just about individual effort, it's about connection and learning from others. My friends and teachers became partners in my journey, celebrating my progress and encouraging me to tackle new challenges. Each suggestion and correction was like a stepping stone, helping me climb closer to fluency. Sharing my work wasn't always easy, but it was one of the most rewarding parts of my learning experience. Milestone moment. After months of dedicated journaling, I found myself one evening revisiting my earliest entries. As I flipped through the pages, I couldn't help but smile at the clumsy sentences and basic vocabulary I had started with. Words were misspelled, grammar was shaky, and ideas felt fragmented. But then, I read a recent entry, a detailed, flowing paragraph describing my day. The difference was remarkable. My vocabulary had expanded significantly, and my sentence structures were not only more complex but also more natural. It was a tangible reminder of how far I had come. That moment was a turning point for me. It wasn't just about seeing progress on paper, it was about feeling proud of the effort I had invested. I realized that every small step, every sentence written, and every mistake corrected had contributed to my growth. The simple act of documenting my thoughts had turned into a powerful tool for improvement. It motivated me to keep going, knowing that each day of practice brought me closer to fluency. This visible progress became a source of encouragement, reminding me that the journey, though challenging, was undeniably worth it. Learning a language is like climbing a mountain. Each step brings you closer to the summit. At first, the climb feels steep and overwhelming. You're unsure where to place your feet, and every step seems small compared to the journey ahead. But with each move forward, you build confidence and momentum. For me, setting achievable goals was like placing steady footholds on the climb, making the journey manageable and giving me reasons to celebrate along the way. I started with small, realistic targets. My first goal was to learn 5 new words a day. I carried a small notebook where I jotted down words I heard or read, along with their meanings and an example sentence. By the end of each week, I would review those words, using them in conversations or writing to reinforce my memory. This simple habit added hundreds of new words to my vocabulary over time and showed me the power of consistency. Another goal was to practice pronunciation daily. I picked one challenging word or phrase and repeated it until it felt natural. Some days, I stood in front of a mirror, watching how my mouth moved as I pronounced words. Other days, I recorded myself and compared my speech to native speakers. It was a humbling process, but hearing my progress week by week kept me motivated. One of my most rewarding goals was holding short conversations entirely in English. At first, these lasted only a few minutes, and I prepared scripts in advance to guide me. I started with friends who were patient and supportive, gradually extending these conversations to strangers in everyday situations. Each successful exchange, no matter how brief, felt like a victory that fueled my determination to keep improving. Achieving these small goals gave me a sense of accomplishment and kept me focused on the bigger picture. Every milestone, no matter how minor, was a reminder that I was moving forward. It taught me that progress doesn't happen overnight, but is the result of consistent effort over time. With each step I took, the summit of fluency felt less distant and more attainable. Small goals, big wins. Learning 5 new words daily was one of the simplest yet most effective strategies I implemented in my English learning journey. At first, it felt like a small step, but over time, it became a habit that had a profound impact on my vocabulary and confidence. Every day, I carried a small notebook in my pocket, ready to jot down any unfamiliar words I encountered. I found these words in books, on signs, in movies, and during conversations. Beside each word, I would write its meaning and an example sentence to better understand its usage. To reinforce my learning, I reviewed these words every evening. I would create sentences using the new vocabulary, sometimes weaving them into short stories or conversations with friends. On some days, I even drew small pictures beside the words in my notebook to help me visualize their meanings. This creative approach made the learning process enjoyable and engaging, and it allowed me to retain the words more effectively. By the end of each week, I would have learned 35 new words. Over months, these small daily efforts accumulated, and I noticed a significant improvement in my ability to understand and express myself in English. My conversations became more varied and interesting, and I started recognizing words in different contexts, which boosted my confidence. This simple daily goal taught me the power of consistency and the incredible results that come from committing to small but meaningful actions. Practicing a single pronunciation challenge until it felt natural was one of the most transformative parts of my language learning journey. I would take one word or phrase that I found particularly difficult and break it down syllable by syllable. For instance, the word thought used to trip me up every time I said it. I would mispronounce it, confusing it with taught, or skip over it altogether out of frustration. To tackle this, I started by listening closely to how native speakers pronounced it, paying attention to their tongue placement and the soft th sound. Standing in front of a mirror, I practiced over and over, mimicking what I had heard. At first, my attempts felt awkward, and I couldn't quite get it right. But I didn't give up. I recorded myself saying the word and compared it to recordings of native speakers, fine-tuning my pronunciation with each attempt. Every day, I dedicated a few minutes to repeating that one word in sentences. I thought about it yesterday. What are your thoughts on this? Slowly but surely, the words started to feel natural. This method wasn't just about getting a single word right, it was about training my mouth and ears to work together. It taught me patience and the importance of focused practice. Once I mastered one word, I moved on to another challenge, like restaurant or comfortable, both of which had tricky syllables that required deliberate effort to pronounce smoothly. Over time, these small pronunciation victories added up, boosting my confidence and making my speech sound more fluent and clear. What once felt impossible became second nature, proving that persistence truly pays off in the long run. Holding a 5-minute conversation entirely in English felt like climbing a small mountain, yet it was one of the most rewarding challenges I set for myself. At first, even the idea of speaking for 5 minutes seemed impossible. I struggled with finding the right words, forming sentences quickly, and maintaining the flow of conversation without pausing too long. But I knew that pushing through this difficulty was essential if I wanted to become fluent. To prepare for these conversations, I started by planning simple topics to discuss. I wrote down key phrases and vocabulary related to everyday subjects like hobbies, favorite foods, or weekend plans. This helped me feel more prepared and reduced the anxiety of not knowing what to say. I practiced these conversations by myself, standing in front of a mirror or even recording my voice to hear how I sounded. The more I rehearsed, the more confident I became. The first time I attempted a 5-minute conversation with a friend, I was nervous. My heart raced, and I worried about making mistakes or running out of things to say. But to my surprise, my friend was incredibly patient and encouraging. They asked questions, giving me time to think and respond. As the conversation progressed, I realized that the goal wasn't to speak perfectly but to communicate effectively. By the end of those 5 minutes, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment that I had never experienced before. Over time, these short conversations became easier and more enjoyable. I started engaging with people in real-life situations, like asking for help in stores or chatting with new acquaintances. These interactions were often unplanned, but the practice I had done made me feel prepared. Each successful exchange boosted my confidence, showing me that I could express myself and be understood, even if my sentences weren't perfect. What I learned from this experience was that progress doesn't happen overnight. It's about taking small steps, practicing consistently, and celebrating every achievement, no matter how small. Each 5-minute conversation was a building block, helping me climb closer to fluency and making English feel less like a challenge and more like a natural part of my life. I surrounded myself with English in every possible way, making it an inseparable part of my daily life. The first step was changing my phone settings to English. At first, it felt a bit daunting as I had to navigate through unfamiliar terms, but it forced me to learn new vocabulary and understand everyday phrases in context. Each notification, menu, or system update became a mini lesson, subtly teaching me while I went about my day. Next, I began reading English blogs. I chose topics I enjoyed, like travel, cooking, and personal development. These blogs not only introduced me to new words and expressions but also showed me how native speakers structured their thoughts and communicated their ideas. I would highlight unfamiliar words and look them up later, making notes and practicing how to use them in sentences. Joining online communities was perhaps the most impactful change. I found forums and social media groups where people shared their thoughts and experiences in English. Interacting in these spaces gave me a chance to practice writing and reading in a natural, conversational tone. When I posted questions or comments, the replies I received were often detailed and kind, helping me learn new idioms and cultural nuances. These interactions made me feel connected to a global community, proving that language is not just about words but about building relationships and understanding perspectives. Whenever I felt stuck, I reminded myself of why I started. I would close my eyes and picture the future I dreamed of, walking confidently through a bustling airport in a foreign country, presenting my ideas in fluent English at an international conference, or sharing laughter with new friends from around the world. These vivid images were like fuel for my determination, pulling me out of moments of doubt and frustration. They reminded me that every small effort I made today was bringing me closer to the life I envisioned. It wasn't just about learning a language, it was about opening doors to opportunities and creating a world where I could truly connect with others. Keeping that vision alive kept me moving forward, step by step. Example: after months of dedicated practice, I stood in front of a crowd at my friend's wedding, about to deliver a speech in English. My hands trembled slightly as I held the microphone, and my heart raced with a mix of nervousness. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that persistence is the key to success. Every word spoken, every sentence written, and every mistake made brings you closer to fluency. My journey wasn't perfect, but it was worth every effort. Today, I can share my story in English confidently, a dream that once felt impossible. I hope my journey inspires you to start or continue your own. Remember, every small step counts, and one day, you'll look back and be amazed at how far you've come. If this story inspired you, please consider subscribing to my channel, liking this video, and sharing it with your friends. Together, we can build a community of learners helping each other grow. Stay tuned for more tips and stories to expand your vocabulary and master English with confidence.